achieve a true randomize. It's comical that they say achieve a true randomize because when they're manipulating it, it's not truly random. If it was truly random, then you'd have more extremes on this is disincentive side or the excessive incentive when you just happen to get lucky. On today's video, I went through over 1,000 patents from Blizzard, Activision, as well as Microsoft. I just want to talk about how they could possibly be implemented in Diablo 4. Keep in mind, patents are not always going to be used. They're kind of thrown out as a blanket to prevent ideas from being sniped by people or firms that like to cover a bunch of different ideas and then force people to have to purchase them in order to make something in the future. So a lot of individuals will actually file a bunch of patents, kind of like how somebody would file something like GrandTheftAuto7.com or buy a bunch of domain names that they know a company's going to need in the future and then turn around and sell them for like $50,000. So there's always going to be ways that people are going to be trying to make money. People are going to be trying to make money. Companies are going to be trying to cover their asses. Patents last for 20 years and then they have to be refiled. All right, so first off, I'm going to show you a patent from Matthew Berger. Matthew Berger was a game developer, senior game designer for Diablo 3. This one was a patent involving the nemesis system on Diablo 3, but I think this is also active while you're like in the Hell Tides, when you have your enemies, your little danger system, when you're fighting like the Blood Maiden or when you're fighting the Helltide bosses. In an approach, one or more player characters controllable by a first player account perform an action in an instance of a game world. In the event that the action meets one or more conditions for creating a nemesis, a computer system controlling the game instance selects a second player account to be invaded by a nemesis. So this could be when you have the danger system real high in the Hell Tides and you got another player around, they're getting invaded by that as well. Same thing with the Blood Maiden. Same thing with even like the Helltide boss, like Kixarth or whatever it's called. This is also true for inside of the PvP zone, the Field of Hatred. Keep in mind, this is not bad at all. This is literally just one of the patents. I wanted to show this one first because this one's a Blizzard patent that is being used in a Diablo game. And I'm pretty sure it's being used in Diablo 4 as well. Also keep in mind, if there's a patent that's being held by Activision, it's going to be able to be used by Blizzard as well. Same thing with Microsoft because they're all partner companies. So these two are all good. Nothing shady or nefarious carnival game type of thing going on right there. All right. Selectively incorporating feedback from a remote audience. A method, apparatus, and stored instructions are provided for selectively incorporating feedback from a remote audience into live content. The feedback is incorporated into one part of a segment at the same time that another part of the segment is played to an audience. A feedback manager may receive feedback from audience members on a first part of the segment while a second later part of the segment is being played to the audience by a client machine, and while a third, even later part of the segment is being generated by a content manager. The feedback manager may then compare feedback data to stored criteria to determine whether or not to change the playing content. This right here leads me to believe that this is how, if you're playing the game and you rage quit because you just died in the pits or whatever, and you get off the game knows that. That's the feedback. And that's going to give you easier content next time you get on. Whether that's the particular modifiers that enemies spawn on them or whatever the case. You're not going to get a Windy Waller Fire Enchanted all in one pack that traps you in a corner and one-shots you. Feedback data could be plenty of different things. Maybe quitting out of a certain particular game mode and going on to another game mode. That's feedback data. Initial results of a reinforcement learning model using a heuristic. Systems and methods for improving initial results of a reinforcement learning model are described herein. In an embodiment, a server computer initiates a reinforcement learning model. This is where they're getting data based off what you're doing in the game, and it's adapting on the fly. When While executing the reinforcement learning model, the server computer computes a first result value for a particular action using the reinforcement learning model and a second result for the particular action using a heuristic separate from the reinforcement model, based at least in part on the first result value for the particular action and the second result value for the particular action. The server computer performs the particular action. The server computer, determining a result from performing the particular action, updates the reinforcement learning model. Like, oh, here's James. He rage quits every time this happens in the game. Let's try to change that by doing this whenever that event, annotate this event that happens before he rage quits, and maybe tone that down a little bit so we can get him to play the game more and possibly go to the shop and spend some money. This one's one that I think is pretty funny, and this one could be very nefarious. Systems and methods for providing a tailored video game based on a player-defined time period. This one's essentially talking about how long your game sessions are and then adjusting the content that you experience within that based off how long you play. This is why all the new players and stuff, like noobs, people that are not as high skilled, tend to like defend games and stuff so much because of things like this. They play it for very little time, so they don't see as many of the problems within the game inherently because of that. But on top of that, there's actually systems going on in the background to make their short play session more fun. So they actually have a more efficient, shorter play session than somebody who has more time available to them. The present specification describes systems and methods for customizing a video game to a player-defined time period. Content units of a video game, which could be your loot drops, are selected based on at least one of multiple predefined criteria. Content units are then edited to fit into player-defined time period. Game gear required for playing the selected content units is determined. It's like, oh, does he need a Shaco to push further content, or does he need, some greater affixes that maybe have a certain stat that this character is lacking in? Whatever the case. The edited content units and the selected game gear are provided to the player within the player-defined time period. No wonder after a month away from the game, or after taking last season off, I do like 2 or 3 regular Duriel runs and drop a Shaco. What a what a coincidence. There's a lot more details about this. I'm just going over like the gist of these, because I could sit here and go over this for a super long time. Systems and methods for dynamically modifying video game content based on non-video gaming content being concurrently experienced by a user. This literally leads me to believe that, like, if you're watching YouTube or something on your same PC that you're playing the game on that's connected to the internet, they're collecting data based off what you're watching on YouTube and stuff. So they're creating a profile on you essentially, and they know what kind of web traffic's going on. I'd be interested to know what is actually in the end user license agreement for some of these games these days, because there's probably a lot of data collection going on that you don't know. System and method for optimizing virtual games. The present specification describes an assistive tool that facilitates the design of video games to achieve a true randomized, non-biased, and neutral gaming environment that is bounded so that extremes of disincentives and excess incentives are avoided. That right there tells you they're bounding your game experience so that you don't get too much loot, and also so that you don't get too little. So it's random. Achieve a true randomize. It's comical that they say achieve a true randomize, because when they're manipulating it, it's not truly random. If it was truly random, then you'd have more extremes on this disincentive side or the excessive incentive when you just happen to get lucky. So they're making a, everybody gets the good randomness kind of thing, kind of like a altruism of randomness, I suppose, in one embodiment. But it really could be just manipulating you to make you spend more time on the game and you don't know you're manipulated. In one embodiment, the tool allows for simulation of game environment and generates variables that enable reward acquisition by players. On one embodiment, the tool allows the game systems to be defined in such a way that an agent, such as an artificial player implemented by a computer program, can interact with the game environment. In one embodiment, the present tool uses generative models driven by data from previous versions of a game to define the behavior of such agents in simulated games. So this is just optimizing things. This is taking your... This is basically manipulating your RNG, essentially. Manipulating the reward factors and manipulating the dopamine factors of the game in order to try to keep you playing it for longer. Whether that could be throwing a wrench in your run, or whether that could be whatever the case may be, because you're playing too good and you're doing too well, so you're hitting that excess incentives. Time to bring him down a little bit. I thought this one was pretty interesting. System and method for simulating gameplay of NPCs distributed across network end user devices. I'm not going to read all of this, but essentially this means that they can use your processing power. Like if you're sitting in town AFK on Diablo 4, they can be using your processing power to take strain off of their server and power some of the AI for NPCs going on in the game, which is funny as hell. That goes back to the whole, what are we signing up for in the end user license agreement? This is basically saying that, look, an end user device may be available to participate when it has sufficient computing capacity, when in an idle or standby state. So you're like, your computer's a crypto miner, except it's powering NPCs in the game. So it's not just you're loading everybody's loot and everything. You might be, taking some load off the servers or whatever the case may be. System and method for generating personalized messaging campaigns for video game players. This is in Diablo 4. This is called like the Fortunate Finds or something like that for the store, where they give you personalized deals. So we don't even really need to talk about this. This is just them covering how they basically tailor marketing based off, what kind of what class do you play in the game, all the different things. It's personalized just for you because they have a profile on you. There's probably plenty more interesting things to be found in the end user license agreement as well, so I might have to take a look at that. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day.